Okay, everyone, welcome to this special meeting of council. I will call the meeting to order at 4:42 p.m. I would like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. Just one second. We respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional and ceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. And ceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and we are currently situated on occupied territories. I'm going to start with a roll call of attendance. I'll call out a position. Please give your name, pronouns, and access needs. And access needs are anything that would prevent you from fully engaging in the meeting, or and that could be things like environmental challenges, a noisy background, a unstable internet, or it could be other challenges like needing somebody to speak up or speak more plainly or repeat themselves. Or if you have to leave early due to another another major commitment or emergency. Okay. So I will start with archaeology. I think archaeology. I saw you pop up. Oh, right. Marie said it changed the system, so she'll request.
You could do it now.
Thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Damon. My pronouns are he, him, and my accessibility needs are met.
Thank you. Bachelor of Environment.
Hi guys, my name is Tiana. My pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. Behavioral Neuroscience.
Hi everyone, my name is Arthi. Pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Biology.
Hello everyone, my name is Nick. My pronouns are he, him, his, and all my access needs have been met.
Thank you. BPK.
Hi everyone, my name is Kashish. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm not really feeling well today, so I might ask people to repeat themselves. But other than that, all my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Chemistry is vacant. Cognitive science.
Hi, my name is Hillary. My pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met, and I'm an alternate.
Thank you. Communications is, I think, still vacant. Besides criminology.
Hi, my name's Ava. I use she, her pronouns, and all my access needs are met, and I'm also an alternate.
Thank you. Data science. Just double check. Vadim.
Oh, hi. Hi, my name is Vadim. My pronouns is he, him, and I'm good with everything. I have an access, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Economics. Education sent in their regrets. Engineering science. Just go. Double checking. Nope. Okay. English sent regrets. Environmental science sent regrets. Film is vacant. French, we sent regrets.
No, I didn't submit my regrets. Hi all, my name's Kylie. I use she, her pronouns, and all of my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you for the correction. GSWS. No, vacant. Geography.
Hi, my name is Natasha. She, they pronouns, all of my access needs are met.
Thank you. Health sciences.
Hi everyone, my name is Giselle. I use she, her pronouns, and my access needs are met. I'll just keep my camera off for the most part.
Thank you. History. Someone let me know that there might be an alternate attending from history. Okay. Indigenous studies. Galia, are you the alternate for ISSA? Oh, sorry, that's international studies. My apologies, my mistake.
Is it cool for me to go?
Hmm?
Is it my turn to go? Sorry, I don't know if I messed up.
No, I got the acronyms messed up.
Right, sorry.
Interactive arts and technology.
Hello, my name is Jeremy. Felix, pronouns he, him, and they, them, and my accessibility needs have been met. Thank you.
Thanks. International studies.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaliyah. My pronouns are she, her. All of my access needs are currently met, and I'm here as the alternate for the ISSA.
Thank you. Labor studies. Linguistics.
Hi, my name is Olive. She, her pronouns, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. Mathematics. Take this up regrets. Mechatronics, systems engineering. Riley in chat. Hi, my name is Riley McWilliams. Pronouns are he, him, his. We'll have to leave at 6:30 due to going home on the bus and bad data. Depending on time, I may be able to join once I get home. Okay, thank you, Riley. MBB.
Hi, my name is Avni. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations research.
Hi, my name is Ash. Pronouns are he, him, his. All my access needs have been met.
Thank you. Philosophy, sent regrets. Physics is vacant. Political science, sent regrets. Oh, Audrey Heath sent in chat. Sorry, my audio cut out. My name is Audrey Heath. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here for the Indigenous Studies Student Union as an alternate. Thank you very much. Political science and regrets. Psychology.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Liu. My pronouns are she, they, and my access needs are met, but I will need to leave at 7.
Thank you. Okay. Science is vacant. SAS.
Hi everyone, my name is Akam. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all of my access needs are met.
Thank you. Sociology, anthropology.
Hi, I am Kayla, pronouns she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. Software systems, sent regrets. Statistics and actuarial sciences. Okay. Sustainable energy engineering.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Al Shaboul. My pronouns are he, him, his. All my access needs are met, but I will be leaving at around 7-ish.
Okay, thank you. Theater and world lit are vacant. Moving into constituency groups, FNMISA.
The FNMISA counselor is running a little bit late, but they will be here.
Okay, thank you for giving me a heads up. International Student Association. Or sorry, International Student Advocates.
Hello everyone, my name is Chi, pronouns she, her, hers. My accesses are all met. Thank you.
Thank you. Soka.
The counselor will be joining later, but the alternate will be joining as Emmanuel.
Okay, thank you very much. Women's Center counselor, Nim. Hi everyone, Nim here, she/them. Calling from the Stone and the territory of the Kwanlin and Semiahmoo nations. My access needs are currently met, but I will be keeping my camera off as there's a lot going on at my house right now. Additionally, I will have to leave at 7:30, so hopefully we will not run long. Thank you. The Student Athletes Advisory Committee, Councillor Stat regrets. Now we on to Executive Officer, President, and also the Chair. I am here, and access needs anxiety is going to be a little bit all over the place, so I might be a bit unfocused at times. Might actually have people ask them to repeat something. Appreciate if people could not send me a lot of different messages from different avenues, because that causes a lot of distraction on my end. So thank you. VP Internal and Organizational Development.
Hi, my name is Chloe. My pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. VP Finance and Services. In chat, hi everyone. Alma Spangura, she, her, hers, VP Finance Services. All access needs met using mobile data. Thank you. VP University and Academic Affairs.
Hey everyone, my name is Serena. My pronouns are they, she. And other than just asking people to repeat themselves here and there, my access needs are met.
Thank you. VP External and Community Affairs.
Hi, my name is Matt. My pronouns are he, him, his. My accessibility needs, I will be keeping off my camera because my Wi-Fi has been weird on my computer, so I will let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. VP Equity and Sustainability.
Hi everyone, my name is Marie. Pronouns are she, her, hers. For my access needs, I also may ask you to repeat yourself, just because sometimes the closed captions are not the best, and I lip read, so just heads up.
Thank you. VP Events and Student Affairs. In chat, hi Jess, she/hers have been sick, so we'll take it easy today and camera will be off. Okay, thank you, Jess. Okay, that is everyone. We have 30 people total with 7 execs, so we have quorum. We need at least 25 with simple majority also of execs, so we should be good. And of course, there is some people will be joining a little bit later, so I think we're good for the meeting. Okay, we also have a number of guests, students attending, so thank you very much. Just kind of a quick overview, we only have the one motion on today for at the special meeting of council. This council meeting is dedicated to this item, and so that we have time to be able to discuss and vote on it. Okay, move into consent agenda. Item 4.1, I'll read out the motion. Be resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. There is currently one item on the consent agenda, ratification of regrets. The motion reads, be resolved to ratify the regrets for the April 20th special council meeting from philosophy counselor Nicole Kerrigan. Biomedical physiology is actually not. Let me just double check this list.
Kashish is here.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll pull that out just quickly. So I'll object to this because actually we need to add new ones to it anyways. And so that there's no other items in the consent agenda, so that will pull out, and we'll actually handle this motion directly. I move to amend the motion for ratification of regrets for this council meeting to be resolved to ratify the regrets for the April 20th special council meeting from the philosophy counselor Nicole Kerrigan, environmental science counselor Paige Ripley, education counselor Ji Hee Jin Choi, political science counselor Abhishek Parmar, English counselor Liz Gayerden, criminology counselor Charlotte Taylor Bayer, software systems counselor Shashank. My apologies, I can't pronounce the last name. The student athletics and advisory committee, Paul Ursu. I think that's it. That'd be my mic. Just trying to see if there's anything that's causing it. Okay. I think that's it for. Yeah, so that's the amended for ratification and regrets. I've moved that. Do I have a seconder?
Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Any discussion on my amendments? Did I miss anyone? Or regrets?
Sorry, just a quick heads up for counselors. If you could just indicate in the beginning of your that you're a counselor, just so I can make you a co-host so you can unmute. That would be very helpful.
Okay. Seeing that there's no comments in chat or elsewhere that I'm missing anyone. Hillary, in this case, will we count you as a counselor? Just have alt in your name in some form so that we can also make sure to correctly mount that. Okay.
Sorry, one more thing, Corbett. I'm going to need you to make me host.
I don't know if I can actually do that.
I think you can.
Give me a second. I'll see if I can.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was actually able to do that. Thank you. Okay, back on the actual agenda. I've added a couple people and removed Kashish from the ratification regrets. Is there any, just again, did I miss anybody? I don't think so. So I will take that as a vote. To vote, all in favor, seek unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you to record your vote. That carries. So the ratification of regrets has been amended. Now we'll move back to that motion itself that has been changed. Be resolved to ratify the regrets of, I'll just do a shorter version, philosophy counselor, environmental science counselor, education counselor, political science counselor, English counselor, criminology counselor, student advisory athletics committee counselor, and software systems counselor. I think we can just move to a vote. All in favor, seek unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you to record your vote. Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll now move on to section 5, adoption of the agenda. Motion 5.1 is be resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Do I have a mover?
Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Do I have a seconder?
French.
French. Okay, thank you. Is there any amendments to this agenda item? I believe there's one I can move to have all this. I'm moving to add a presentation section ahead of the new business item. It's related to the new business. It's just from a structural perspective, it's just easier to do it there. And it's Marie, can you just clarify? It's a presentation from the working group, correct?
Yep, so just presentation overview of the working group and just an explanation from the first motion to now, and just brief debriefing on the issues policy.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote on this amendment. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you to record your vote. Okay, seeing none, that amendment passes. Now we're back on the main motion, which has been with the agenda that's been amended, adding in the presentation. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you to record your vote. That passes unanimously. I understand probably from a lot of the guests here who are not familiar with Robert's rules or our structure, this feels a little weird, but this is just a bit of housekeeping, and we have to set up our agenda for the meeting so that everything can stay on task. And so there's a lot of procedural stuff. But now we are into the new item that's been added to the agenda, the presentation. And so I believe, Marie, you'll be sharing, and the presenters, you're welcome to introduce yourself and speak when you are ready.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to give some space first. Let's do Parsa and then Delia, who will be presenting with me. Yeah, so folks from the Free Palestine Working Group, or folks who've been helping in general. So I'm going to give space to them to introduce themselves as well. So also like name, pronoun, access would be good to add as well. And Parsa, you could go first.
I can unmute. I'm not sure if Parsa, why he can't.
No, I can unmute now. Hi, my apologies. My name is Parsa. I'm an SFU student. That's it. That's it. I'll pass it on to Dahlia. Oh, my access needs are met.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dahlia, and I've been helping the incredible folks here with their policy and access needs met, she, her pronouns. So Parsa, myself, and Marie will be starting just like a little briefing. I'll pass it on to you, Marie, first, and then maybe we go ahead. I think we're sharing the screen.
Yes. Yeah, we are sharing the screen. I'm going to do that now. So yeah, I'll start off with like a intro bit, and then we'll give you like a perspective of the issues policy as well. So of course, this will be a drafted issues policy, and it'll be listed last on the IP list as 10 Palestinian liberation. So what we're going to be chatting about today is a couple things. So the first thing is we're going to be chatting about how did we get here? Like, we're in a special meeting, and we'll talk to you about kind of the activities that we've been going throughout the whole entire year to get to this point. Secondly, we'll give you some policy background, so context to some of the pieces. I'm just going to give folks a heads up. When you're looking at the policy, the preamble piece is basically separate from the actual policy. So actual policy of is going to be the supports and opposes section. So that's what we're going to hop into next. After we give context, we'll hop into the draft issues policy and look into the support and opposes sections as well. And then lastly, I'll hand it off to Corbett, who's going to be discussing how he will chair, of course, and giving a framework of how you will engage today. So as you know, like, we do function on Robert's rules, which can be very confusing at times, and we're going to try to make it as clear as possible. So, of course, there was the creation of the Free Palestine Working Group. So, of course, on May 2021, this was almost a year ago. It's been a long time. Basically, the SFSS Council voted unanimously to condemn the State of Israel's colonization of Palestine and struck a working group called the Free Palestine Working Group to formulate two things. So the first thing was a statement on behalf of Council that also had to be voted in, and secondly, the issues policy, which we will be voting on today. And on June 10th is when we had released the statement recommended, which was also unanimously endorsed by Council. It was constructed by the Free Palestine Working Group, and it was entitled SFSS Statement on Israeli Colonization of Palestine, which discussed a couple things, which were, of course, solidarity with Palestinian people and condemnation of the Israeli state settler colonialism advancements, human rights violations, and war crimes against Palestinians, which were very big. I'm going to put some links in the chat as well. Over here, you're going to see two main links. So the first one is this original statement and the original motion. And then the second one is a notice of motion and update as well. So just to give some context, we started working on the issues policy at the beginning, around June as well. It was a very long process, and you can only imagine, like, there's so much you can put in an issues policy, and just thinking of how we could tailor it. So we had multiple writing sessions within the working group. We also had a couple developmental sessions within Council. And then we also had formulated a discussion panel event for the issues policy endorsement. Oh, sorry, for the issues policy. So over there, we had some really amazing folks come and discuss with us, like, really the main principles in the issues policy. So students and the community could also, like, learn a bit more. Furthermore, we actually had vetted out the issues policy to several organizations that share the same values in terms of anti-racism, anti-oppression, and such. And in this way, I'll show you the endorsements on the next page, but it was really awesome to see that there was a large support. And then, so this is a policy. So with policies at the SFSS, you have to put forward a notice of motion. It usually is 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what kind of policy it is. So for us, we had put forward a notice of motion on March 30th that lasted for 2 weeks. This usually gives counselors the ability to, read through the issues policy and consult on the basis of it as well. Furthermore, we were supposed to have our original meeting last week, and I know a lot of you came out, and I'm hoping that you're here again today. But yeah, we actually we decided to move forward and actually have a special meeting today instead. The reasons for it is that, we wanted to look more into the legalities and the legal understanding, specifically when it comes to University of Toronto. And take the time to really look into this and look into other legal understandings as well. And I'm happy to say, like, we're here, so it means that's good news, and that we can move forward. So for next, I just wanted to highlight and really thank some of the folks who have endorsed this drafted Palestinian liberation issues policy. Some of the main ones, which are really amazing: SJP, which is the Student for Justice in Palestine group at SFU, SPHR, PYM, and some other really amazing folks. A lot of these folks are some of our really staple advocacy clubs and groups and constituency groups at the SFSS. So I was really happy to see that they really supported as well. Some really great notables too, like ARC. All right. Yeah, so just again, a heads up when it comes to the policy, which we were just indicating is, of course, the main policy piece is the supports and opposes section. So we also will be deliberating that, but I'm gonna just hand it off to Delia and Parsa to go over the policy background.
So,
Oh,
so I'll start off and then pass it on to Parsa. So just a little summary about the policy background itself and what are the contents of the historical background. So the reason, again, like following what Marie had already said, the reason that the policy was put together was based on the current events of last year, around the time of the bombardment in Gaza and the dispossessions in Sheikh Jarrah, which were essentially just a bigger picture of settler colonialism over the span of 74 years. And so the policy came about to reflect that and for the SFSS essentially to take a stand and do something as a student society. And so the main components essentially encompass how British imperialism and Zionism are really the roots of settler colonialism and how that has contributed to ethnic cleansing and dispossessions in Palestine. And of course, following through with the system of apartheid. And so that's really what the policy is meant to reflect. It's meant to reflect this stand for justice and human rights, and essentially supporting Palestinians against settler colonialism, and kind of this implications of Zionism, which is essentially meant to subjugate Palestinians and to remove them from homes and context. And also the policy really looks at the ways in which Zionism and settler colonialism impact Palestinians who are on campuses and who are in academic institutions. And the way that it talks about that is how SFU is complicit in supporting Israeli settler colonialism. And so it also looks at how Palestinians on campuses are attacked, how they are put on dossiers, how they're doxxed, how their livelihoods and careers are ruined just for being Palestinian or for getting involved in Palestinian work. This also encompasses other students who have been involved in the Palestinian movement, so non-Palestinians and allies have also been doxxed as well. So the policy really focuses as well on that and just how SFSS can really take a stand to incorporate that. And it kind of looks at ways of kind of what BDS looks like for the SFSS and how they can look at what holdings SFU has. So whether that's through funding of exchange programs or supporting, supporting groups that are very subjugating against Palestinians and have this anti-Palestinian rhetoric. And so those are kind of like a bit of the summary, and I will pass it on to Parsa to add anything else as well as we move forward.
Parsa, sorry, I'm just going to take a quick pause if that's okay. I'd really like to actually go through our community guidelines that we had listed out. I wanted to do that in the beginning and completely forgot. So I just wanted to note, like, we are going to list this as a warning, of course, but just please, we need to be following discussion and community guidelines, of course, as you know, within our presentations. They're presentations specifically for this motion going forward to give appropriate context. And it's really important that all of us are able to really engage and be able to listen collectively. So I would like to know that we are typically, as Corbett said earlier in this meeting as well, it's really important that we don't use the chat for reasons of, commenting, unless it is relevant or you have an accessibility need, which is completely okay. So we're just asking that there are no interruptions through chat, video, or audio. And this means really disturbing either motions or chat or, discussion in the chat that do take away from the presentation or discussion at hand in this way. We do have ways in which, you know, people can ask questions and discuss. What you could do is feel free to message me. I would also be happy to like meet with you as well. We could definitely have a meeting if you would like to have a thorough discussion. But furthermore, we are not going to be accepting discriminatory language or behavior of any sort. And of course, if these things are not respected, because it really is integral to the safety and the smoothness of this meeting, unfortunately, we will have to remove any attendee who is not following the behavior expected, of course, of our community. And we want to continue to share this space in community. And in doing so, we really need to all have a part in helping curating a safe space and an acceptable one as well, as you know. And I'm going to take us back to the presentation. In the meantime, though, we will indicate further ways in which you can engage, and Corbett will do that before discussion. So let me just jump into here. Sorry, folks, you could continue.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Dahlia. I think Dahlia succinctly identified and explained the major currents that need to be understood to understand the Palestinian situation and the Palestinian struggle. We also have to recognize that there are patterns to Israeli aggression and Israeli settler colonialism, especially in recently, where we've seen the past 2 years. I mean, it's actually been much longer than that. Assaults on Masjid al-Aqsa and ongoing ethnic cleansing in occupied territories. Bombing of Gaza following up after assaults on Masjid al-Aqsa and assaults in Jerusalem. And the imprisonment of Palestinians en masse. So collective punishment, something that is outright illegal under international law, and something that is particularly concerning to a pedagogical institution, a place of knowledge production, the imprisonment of Palestinian students and denying their right to education beyond the precarious situation that they've always obviously been forced into. Now, when it comes to the historical situation, again, as Dahlia mentioned, one cannot separate the Palestinian struggle with the construction of a settler colonial apparatus and an ideology that is inherently settler colonial. The founding fathers of Zionism did not obfuscate the landscape as much as has been obfuscated today. Herzl and Jabotinsky were explicit in their colonial language and explicitly calling for an aggressive removal of either complete non-recognition or aggressive removal of the native population of the land of Palestine. And British imperialism essentially was the greatest ally to Zionism. And one has to factor in all the settler colonial violence around the world, South African apartheid, and the indigenous struggle on Turtle Island being notable struggles against settler colonialism as being inseparable from British imperialism. And the exploitation of the labor and land of the indigenous population. Palestinians, Black South Africans, and the indigenous population as well. And again, to understand all of this, one has to also understand the Nakba as being and 1948 as being a foundational moment in the construction of the contemporary situation. So that is the background. And again, we have to recognize the solidarity between the indigenous struggle on Turtle Island and the solidarity between the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa and the anti-apartheid movement in Palestine.
Did I click something weird? Oh, yeah, makes sense. Sorry. We're going to be hopping into, of course, the issues policy details, so in depth when it comes to the supports and opposes section. And yeah, let's jump into it. Parsa or Delia, would you like to take this piece on?
Yeah, so what parts of this is what the policy is looking like. So essentially the first part is that the SFSS supports the liberation and self-determination of Palestinians in their quest for freedom, justice, right to return and land back, and including all forms of resistance in line with international law. So essentially just supporting Palestinian return, Palestinian refugees, and essentially in the quest for the liberation movement. We shall strive to amplify the efforts of the Palestinian diaspora to bring international pressure on Israel and focus on the lived experiences of Palestinians in all of Palestine. And then B, working with anti-colonial Palestinian, anti-Zionist Jewish groups, student community groups, grassroots organization advocating for Palestinian liberation. And that includes workshops, teach-ins, walkouts, protests, rallies, and other actions via funding, organizational partnerships, and actions that advance the cause of Palestinian liberations. And this also includes the BDS movement, which is boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning the state of Israel and institutions complicit in the oppression of Palestinians. And obviously that's really clear, so I don't have to specify. And then the second slide. And so part C, the aim of the BDS movement, one of many, is to end the Israeli occupation and colonization of all Arab lands and dismantle the apartheid wall that is built essentially between Palestinian villages. It's also to recognize the fundamental rights of Palestinian citizens of Israel to full equality. So what that means is Palestinians with Israeli citizenship who are also treated as they're segregated and treated as second class, and also respect, protect, and promote the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and properties as stipulated in UN Resolution 194. And so essentially just as a whole, the BDS movement was created as a Palestinian-led movement from civil society groups, over 170 in the mid to late 2000s, as just one avenue to get justice because the international community has failed to do so.
I might add that the BDS movement and the call for international mobilization was on the anniversary of the ICJ opinion in 2004, the advisory opinion against the construction of the apartheid wall in the West Bank, in the occupied territory. So it's important to again recognize that international mobilization and using various tactics on every front is incredibly important in legitimizing and supporting the Palestinian struggle.
Yeah, thanks for noting that, Parsa. I wanted to add to this as well. As you know, like there's been a quite interesting wave of many unions that have been taking a stance when it comes to boycott, divestments, and sanctions. And of course, we do want to inherently note it's important that we do discuss this in a ways that, all of us, no matter what, in many ways, and institutions as well, have a great part in ensuring that the state of Israel's apartheid acts do end. And I think it's the obligation of all of us to really ensure that our institutions are doing their due diligence as well in order to, combat the continuation of apartheid, either tactics or actions. And BDS was created in an inspiration of many other forms of boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, like one including South Africa, that was successful. And in many ways, this one is different. And it's just a really cool, sorry, there was something that went off outside. But yeah, there was it's basically a really cool action that institutions can ultimately take on to peacefully isolate like the state of Israel in a way that it can end its apartheid actions. So the reason I'm explaining this is because a lot of times people may not inherently understand the usage of this kind of tactic in the first place, but it's really just to understand that this tactic has been used many times before. It's actually currently being used for Russia in many ways. Like there's a lot of boycotts that are currently happening with Russia, whether it's taking Russia out of the Olympics or I know the BC liquor store just took Russian liquor out of their stores as well. These are ways and forms of protest and to ensure that that continuation of tactics or funding of either a state or a governance doesn't continue if they continue to ultimately harm individuals or continue apartheid tactics. So I just wanted to note that.
Okay, cool. I guess, yeah, I'll do the first part and then Parsa can take the second one. So essentially just going into more detail as to what the SFSS supports in line with the BDS movement. It supports boycotting the state of Israel and institutions, companies, organizations that fund or support Israeli apartheid. So what this looks like locally is just following through examples. The BC liquor stores here, they sell Israeli wines, and those wines are built and essentially created on Palestinian land and Israeli settlements that are illegal under international law. And so the BC liquor store continues to sell them despite there being a 10-year campaign by Palestinian-led organizations in Vancouver. So then you can kind of see that double standard in the fact that they removed Russian wines in like a millisecond. And so to essentially boycotting these companies, these organizations that support these Israeli settlements. And also this includes withdrawing support from Israel's settler colonial state, anything with complicit Israel sporting, cultural, academic institutions. This also looks like locally at SFU, so any kind of programs that SFU is a part of. So examples, SFU has exchange programs with Tel Aviv University and like Go Global exchange programs that students can take part in. And so what a lot of folks don't actually know is that these Israeli universities house Palestinian bodies in the basement of their institutions. And so what looks like boycotting these institutions means removing funding that SFSS can provide. It also looks like including an academic boycott of Israeli universities within the guidelines outlined by PACB, which is the Palestinian and Academic Boycott Group, and following that academic and cultural boycott framework. And so the reason that this boycott, the BDS movement actually does something is because Palestinians have exercised other avenues and they know that international community is not going to liberate them. But one of the avenues of justice is the BDS movement, which allows people to actually take part in. So anyone here can take part in it. Actors and singers and academics internationally have taken part in the BDS movement. So several singers have opted out of singing on settlements and singing in Israel as a step to show that they don't support settler colonization. And so very simple methods of doing so is this movement. And so also continuing, the SFSS supports the divesting from the state of Israel by urging banks, local municipal councils, religious institutions, pension funds, and universities to withdraw investments. So as I mentioned before, the SFSS is going to be encouraging that with SFU. So SFU, every university has an endowment fund, and these endowment funds have investments in Israeli companies. So examples like HP, which is something a lot of people use, and also other companies that SFU has investments with or contracts with. So SFSS is going to be divesting and is going to be urging SFU to divest from these companies. It's also going to be sanctioning, supporting the sanctioning of the state of Israel in order to end its colonialism and apartheid by banning businesses with illegal Israeli settlements and ending military trade. And so SFS supports all of these things on the international level, which is what the policy states, but also on a very local level. So that folks here who, again, might not know and think that this is very far-fetched and there's no connection or complicity here. Again, looking through kind of how SFU supports the Israeli state from here and from Canada, and also just on this land, which is indigenous land as well.
Yeah, and we have to recognize that Canada, especially, is extremely complicit as a state in supporting Israeli apartheid, and so are our institutions. In fact, there have been multiple reports that have come out recently about Canada's military support of the state of Israel and how it's been expanding in recent years ever more. And we have to recognize that we have obligations when it comes to international human rights law to uphold and protect human rights for all of us, and protect Palestinians' right to political participation and enfranchisement. And our right to boycott is within the international humanitarian legal corpus, is enshrined by case law and through the German Federal Constitutional Court and the United States Supreme Court as well. Again, prominent civil rights movement cases, especially the NAACP v. Claiborne hardware opinion plays into this. But our right to boycott, our right to resist is extremely, extremely important. And when we have the legal capacity, and when we have any capacity to resist such blatant violations of humanity, we must do so. We must uphold it. And this is one tactic, one movement that we are following up with.
So, sorry, Delia, I saw you unmute. You could go for it. All right. So this part is the opposes section. So this one basically just talks about how the SFSS is in opposition in general when it comes to laws, policies, and practices that violate international law. So things in which specifically divide and separate rule. So in an instance like this, this could be divided and separate ruling amongst the state of Israel when it pertains to Palestinians versus other Israeli citizens, or the treatment of those folks. Another example is Israel's discriminatory system of immigration for Jewish peoples only, as well as the granting for rights and privileges to Jewish people at the expense of Palestinians. As you can note over here, there is certain examples of this, like the right to return, or the ability for certain Jewish folks to claim citizenship under the state of Israel. And so these are really hard for certain Palestinians to really accept, or, I mean, we should all really take a stance on this as well, including the idea that it's very hard for even many indigenous or refugee Palestinians who have been expelled from their lands or their homes to even return. So we need to consider these as well. The building of illegal settlements on occupied territories. This, of course, includes even Canada in and of itself is a settler colonial project, which is called Canada and resides on Indigenous lands. So this is also something that could be universal. Furthermore, restrictions on Palestinian freedoms of movement and limitations on Palestinian rights to political participation, as many times it almost seems like a freedom of academic integrity or freedom of speech when it comes to many other folks. And when it comes to Palestinians, it's a continuous censorship of either their posts or what they have to say, or their stances within classes in and of itself. And we've been hearing stories recently of many students or allies that are Palestinian or other allies, speaking up in classes about, what is happening in Palestine and being threatened and doxxed as well within these spaces. Furthermore, the inhumane acts of abuse of Palestinian fundamental rights and institutional discrimination and systemic domination. Parsa or Delia, do you want to touch on this one? This is part A.
I think you covered it pretty well for part A.
Okay, sounds good. And secondly, of course, the SFSS does oppose the discourse that adopts or promotes anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous, anti-Arab racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, and any forms of oppression. As you can know, like within even Palestine and the state of Israel, in and of itself, its citizens encompass a wide range of identities and intersectionalities as well. And in many ways, we also need to ensure with, you know, these kinds of conversations and these forms of laws and policies and practices that they don't actually get down on the folks who are most oppressed as well, and really taking a stance when it comes to ruling out discourse that adopts oppression as well when it comes to these humanitarian initiatives. Sorry, my brain is frazzled today, but it's all good. And feel free to hop in, folks. Parsa, Delia.
No, I think that's a good blanket statement.
Thank you. Yeah, and as you realize, if you hop into these meetings all the time, you already know I'm a super stuttery person. Alrighty, and then this section, it's noted the SFSS opposes. So these two are very important sections as well. The first one is the co-opting of the BDS movement to promote or tolerate any act or discourse which perpetuates anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Arab racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, sexism, xenophobia, or homophobia, and zero tolerance on any forms of oppression in the name of these policies. The reason why we say this is it's really important to note that many tactics or movements in and of itself can be co-opted in ways or people who claim that they do adopt these tactics. For instance, like you may even have seen it in the Black Lives Matter movement where, you know, folks started really twisting the language and referring to things like Antifa and such. You know, these aren't the main principles of these movements in the first place, or almost attributing a certain characteristic or stance when it comes to these actions is, yeah, it's not okay. And we really need to be looking at BDS, the movement in and of itself. And if you go to the website as well, they also note this. They note that they really stand strongly against it, as their main motive is to isolate the state of Israel peacefully in a way that ends the apartheid tactics against Palestinians in the first place. And anything that does come after that, of course, they do acknowledge that more has to be done. This isn't the end all be all. However, yeah, I just wanted to note that. So I really encourage you to also look into it, the BDS website itself, and look at what it specifically says. They also have a really good FAQ sheet that answers a lot of questions about their stances and their movement too. And of course, as we know, and I mentioned before, this is the BDS movement is really a universal movement and tactic used by many. Furthermore, D notes that the SFSS opposes apartheid, genocide, slavery, colonial exploitation, and ethnic cleansing or crimes against humanity that are founded on racism and racial supremacy. We support victims, including descendants' right to full reparation. If people are unaware of what racial supremacy means, it means that one race group is either prioritized or centered or focused on more than any of the other ones or any of a specific one as well. So I just wanted to note that too. Marcelo, Delia?
I might just to clarify for folks, a lot of folks might be misunderstood around the question of race. When it comes to international legal language, especially, and the question of race and racial supremacy, ethnicity, nationality, like race, a lot of these are, there's a lot of significant overlap between these when it comes to them. So when it comes to like oppression and domination and supremacy, like these categories, you know, it's kind of the like function within one box. So they're not necessarily separate, and one is not necessarily worse than the other.
Thanks for that. So this part over here is E. So this notes the partnering with or empowering groups that through representation on decision-making bodies, such as the SFSS Council, that do three things. First, censor and suppress actions supporting Palestinians, foster a repressive environment for members of groups that support Palestinian liberation and human rights on the basis of their members and members' support for Palestinians, including using tools such as boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, or that have ties to or seek to establish ties with the State of Israel or any institution complicit in its oppression of Palestinians as guided by this policy. And I feel like this one is a bit self-explanatory in and of itself. Of course, if we are taking the stance to really ensure that the State of Israel ends its apartheid acts, we all need to be synchronous on this and really centering Palestinians on this work as well. To continue these things, it's really not appropriate that we host a space that encourages these three principles within the space, because it can be very regressive for the people within the space. It can really create a space that gets down on folks who are inherently marginalized. Or even affected as well. So in these ways, we really need to take a stance, ensure that the spaces that we hold in our decision-making bodies, like the SFSS Council and Executive specifically, are safe spaces, and that we encourage motions coming forward, projects coming forward, and such that are not regressive in these ways. Delia, Parsa? All right, I'm just gonna send something small in the chat, so I want folks to read this, please. I know that folks are having questions in the chat, of course. As we noted, what happens within council is typically we have a motion, and then we'll have a discussion section that is governed in a specific way. And then there is a deliberation as well amongst council, who also have specific ways in which we have to participate as well. But I did just want to note that we'll let you know how that works in general in a second. And I will be just putting these community guidelines in the chat too, periodically, just so we can continuously remember them as we speak. But just one more time before we do hop into discussions or deliberations, again, please no interruptions during chat, video or audio. I will have to unmute you as well once you list to speak. You will get a warning, of course, unless it is like, involves discriminatory language or behavior. If it does involve discriminatory language and behavior, it's not going to come with a warning. I'm just going to let folks know from now. And this is to continuously ensure that we're holding a safe space and all of us are agents and curating that space collectively. Corbett.
Thank you, Marie. So just to give, again, a quick review of the process. After this presentation, we'll move into the motion. I'll read out the motion, and we'll do what's called mover and seconder. That's so that we will then, and when I get that, then we'll then move into a discussion. This is why we'd like to run discussion, partially because we have a significant number of attendees here that are students, and we have counselors and such. We wanted to prioritize giving students the right to speak first before counselors, and that they will have 2 minutes to speak once. Again, we have 87 people attending, at least over half of those are students. And so that's a lot of people to give some time to. After that, then council will go, will be next to speak. And council will have 2 times to speak for 2 minutes. And we are asking councilors to avoid using the ***, which is direct response, because it can, what's the word? My apologies. It can often break, and people often get it misused, either non-intentionally or not, just because you can get up going back and forth and basically create a debate between people as opposed to discussing discussing the motion and the policy. But please use a point of information or point of order from a process perspective. Counselors have been trained on this. And also, like to say, we are putting a time limit on each chunk of the discussion, 25 minutes for students and 30 minutes for council. Again, that is because as people may have saw, some counselors have to leave, won't be able to stay the full time, and there is worst case scenario, we might have quorum issues. So we do have to put a bit of a time band on the discussion portion of this motion. And yes.
Yeah. So just
go
for it.
I had a question. While we suspending the rules, so there is no priority. We can. I'm already stating that. So as long as council is okay with this different format, then we can go with it.
Yeah, so just another reminder again, so students, you will be able to speak for 2 minutes, and this is like from you speaking from yourself. And then secondly, council will also, after students are done speaking, if we do hit our time limit and like students haven't been able to go forward, council could vote to actually extend this time as well, if applicable. Additionally, for counselors, counselors will have 2 times to speak for 2 minutes each. And then we're going to, of course, again, like what Corbett said, avoid using the ** just because it can be misused. What you can do, if applicable, of course, don't misuse these as well, is use a point of information or a point of order, which you could definitely go into. And then from there on, we will make a vote afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Also, as mentioned earlier, please do not spam chat. I understand it's going to be, some people want to make comments or statements also in chat. However, we also use this as one, that's why we have the opportunity for discussion with students prioritized first. 2, we use chat as a way to list yourself to get on the speakers list. And so if there's a bunch of stuff coming through chat, there's a good chance I'll miss you. And so we do want to kind of go this kind of slow and steady. All right. I appreciate all of you helping with that. Marie, you gotta raise your hands for a minute.
Yeah. Also, you might wonder, okay, well, how am I going to even speak in the first place? Once Corbett says it's right for you to do so, all you have to do is just have to list right in the chat like this. It just is list. So you'll be added to the speakers list. And in this way, we could track who has already spoken, and you will be given your chance for 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Marie, for giving the example. Okay, now we'll move into next section. So, okay, so we'll move now into new business. Section 10, item is 10.1, Palestinian Issues Policy, submitted by VP Equity and Sustainability, Marie Haddad. There's an attachment, the IP 10 Palestinian Liberation Draft formulated by the SFSS. I'll read out the motion, and then we'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Whereas the SFS created SFS issues policies on a variety of stances on social, economic, and political issues that impact our membership. Whereas it's typical for student societies to employ issues policies to establish stances. Whereas on May 19th, 2021, the SFS Council voted unanimously to condemn the state of Israel's colonization of Palestine and instruct a working group called the Free Palestine Working Group to formulate a statement and issues policy on behalf of the Council. Whereas on June 10th, 2021, the SFS released a statement recommended by the Free Palestine Working Group entitled SFS Statement on the Israeli Colonization of Palestine, suggesting SFS solidarity with Palestinian people in condemnation of the Israeli state's settler colonial advancement, human rights violations, and war crimes against Palestinians. Whereas the SFS Palestine Working Group and other groups in solidarity endorsed the drafted Palestinian Liberation Issues Policy, namely SFU Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, UBC Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights, SPHR, the Palestinian Youth Movement Vancouver, PYM, BDS Vancouver-Coast Salish, SFU Arab Student Association, ASA, SFU Migrant Student United, MSU, SFU International Student Advocates, ASA, SFU First Nations, Métis and Inuit Student Association, FNMISA, SFU Students of Caribbean and African Ancestry, SOCA, SOCA, SFU Disability and Neurodiversity Alliance, DNA, the Simon Fraser Public Interest Research Group, SFPIRG, SFPIRG, SFU Radical Individuals for Solidarity in Equity, RISE, SFU International Studies Student Association, ISSA, SFU 350, Anti-Racism Coalition Vancouver, ARC, Canadian Voices Against Racism, CVAR, and the Caucus, among many others. We resolved that the SFS Council amend the SFS issues policies to add the drafted Palestine Liberation Issues Policy titled IP-10, Palestinian Liberation. Do I have a mover?
Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Do I have a seconder?
Kylie.
Sorry, the counselor, say that again.
Health science.
Health sciences. Thank you very much. So moved by Marie, VP Equity and Sustainability, and seconded by Health Sciences Counselor. Okay, we are now moving to discussion. Again, this will be the student section of the discussion. Students, if you would like to, be added to the speakers list to provide a statement, you can speak up to 2 minutes once. And to do that, please type out list in the chat, and I will add you to the list. Okay, there's a lot, and I will do my best to. Okay, I'm going through. The first person is Ria Chatterjee.
Corbett, remember you're going to have to go to their names and unmute them.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, I thought you were doing that. My mistake.
Hi, everyone. As an undergraduate student at SFU, today I urge all council members to vote in favor of this Palestinian liberation policy and want to remind councillors of the importance of this motion within the space of the SFSS and SFU. Canadian universities are mechanisms of the Canadian state, a state built on illegal occupation, and a state that has been complicit in the apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and refusal of self-determination of Palestinians for decades. Universities reinforce settler colonialism and have material interests that contradict working class students, adjunct profs versus tenured profs and admins. This is why it's so important to claim the educational space and resist the imperialist Canadian and US state within our classrooms and campuses. We always talk about decolonizing academia on large panel discussions, yet we intentionally leave Palestinians out of the conversation. Palestinians who are facing the state of Israel's $3.8 billion military fund from the US to maintain apartheid. Since the state of Israel was created in 1948, Palestinians have been exiled, murdered, brutalized, watched their homes being demolished, their children being imprisoned, experienced daily having their ancestral land being ripped away from them. Again, we talk about decolonization, yet Palestinians are intentionally left out time and time again. Self-determination and sovereignty comes above all, and complicity to a denial of Palestinian self-determination speaks volume. As a student body, this is the opportunity to stand against injustice and do our part as an organization to push the institution to stand against apartheid. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Allison. Give me 1 second to find you.
Hi folks, my name is Allison and I am an undergraduate student at SFU and an organizer with SFU 350, which is a student-led climate justice club here at SFU that strongly supports this motion. I'm currently speaking to you guys on the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Tawasin, Stalo, Kwantlen, Chemainus, and Musqueam nations in full support of the Palestinian liberation policy. I'd like to articulate my support through just talking a little bit about land acknowledgements. I know that the council is no stranger to these. You folks have been starting off every single one of your meetings with them, or they at least appear in the beginning of your publicly posted meeting minutes. And so as long as you're continuing to make land acknowledgements in your work, you are making a statement against colonialism. And this opposition should not be confined to the spaces you occupy as council. Something I've learned from Ukimuk Professor Kikia Schneider, who teaches within the Indigenous Studies Department at SFU, that it is much more important what you do with or what you do after your land acknowledgement than actually making it, meaning our words must be backed with real actions. And so I strongly urge the SFSS Council to give meaning and truth to your typical meeting protocol of land acknowledgements by voting yes to this motion and systemically enabling undergrads at SFU to oppose settler colonialism that is happening beyond Turtle Island. So please vote yes and be a part of unsettling the very attitudes that justify the violence that Palestine is currently experiencing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Next is Tulin. 1 second.
Hi everyone, my name is Tulin. I'm a Palestinian student at SFU. Last May, the international community and all of you were witness and exposed to settler colonialism, home dispossessions, and bombardment happening specifically in Sheikh Jarrah and Gaza. And it sparked a unity uprising both in Palestine, across the world, and with hundreds of protests taking place in support of Palestinians. But we know that these attacks are part of the 74-year settler colonial process of ethnic cleansing, and is also conveniently renewed around places of worship, holidays, and celebrations. Palestinians are dehumanized on a daily basis by structural segregation practices on the basis of being Palestinian, with many of them killed or their loved ones taken away. So if you didn't have, if you didn't have the time to review the provided resources, I'll mention some daily experiences. Palestinians are killed while running errands, shot at checkpoints and roads made just for them. They're burned in their own beds and homes, or brutally attacked, kicked out, and forced to pay to have their own homes demolished while watching Zionist settlers from New York move in. These are experiences of friends and family members. The agency that counselors here experience in their learning environment and in their capacity as they represent and advocate for students is one that Palestinian youth in universities and children in schools are constantly deprived from. Arresting student organizers for their activism and anyone related to them as a collective punishment. And this extends to arresting, interrogating, and torturing children on no charge and putting them through solitary confinement. This isn't news, and SFU has ties with Israeli academic institutions that are central to apartheid. Palestinian bodies, as some of the presenters mentioned earlier, are held there as hostages from their families and loved ones and treated as bargaining chips, not even afforded closure and proper burial. So I urge you today to vote in favor of this motion and to really show your commitment to the values and beliefs that you highlighted when you ran your campaigns and got here to be here for students and their extended communities.
Thank you. Next is, oh, and just be heads up, in case I mispronounce your name, my apologies. I am open to correction, and I'll do my best to properly pronounce your name. Yao.
Hi, my name is Yael, and I'm an SFU student. The main issue that Hillel and I have with this policy is that SFSS has not consulted the actual Jewish community on campus, nor considered the effect it has on us, despite our attempts of reaching out to SFSS. Instead, you have tokenized Jews by only consulting independent Jewish voices, which are the group of Jews that agree with your point of view on the conflict, rather than the actual Jewish presence on campus, being Hillel. IJV is not an official SFU club, but rather a Vancouver-based affiliate of a pro-Palestinian group that represents a tiny fraction of the Jewish public opinion. Hillel is an official club on campus and is the largest on-campus Jewish organization internationally that has ties to Israel. It is the only form of Jewish representation on campus and at risk of having no representation on decision-making bodies according to this policy. At the end of the day, the Jewish presence on campus is greatly affected by this policy and will have to experience the anti-Semitism that will come with it, because we may no longer have a safe space on campus. The people who wrote this policy are not Jewish. This will not affect you in your everyday lives. It's coming from a place of privilege, misinformation about the conflict, and our lived experiences as Jews. This very policy has erased the existence of Middle Eastern North African Jews and has framed all Jews as European white colonizers, thus diminishing our existence and our history to fit your anti-Semitic narrative. We are often casted out from social justice efforts due to our stance on Israel. As a result, we feel like we cannot take up any space in these conversations due to how we are treated and often villainized and ignored by the SFSS. For SFSS to go and define anti-Semitism without any consultation of the actual Jewish presence on campus is incredibly inconsiderate, performative, and anti-Semitic. We are being pushed out of conversations that involve defining the very hatred we experience in our lives. Non-Jews should not be leading the conversation when it comes to defining anti-Semitism. We as Jews get to define the anti-Semitism we have faced through our own lived experiences just as much as any other minority group has done in previous SFSS policies. We ask that SFSS consults the actual Jewish presence on campus and to include us in conversations that involve us as you would with any other minority, instead of constantly dismissing us when we do not fit your narrative. As complex as this conflict is, it is incredibly ignorant and not to include the other group of people that affects this, considering the increasing rates of anti-Semitism around the world and on campuses due to BDS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Miranda. 1 second. Sorry, Miranda, I might hit the button again.
Hello, my name is Miranda. I'm an SFU student and I'm a first year. This policy supports all forms of resistance. This implies violent resistance as well. This explicitly contradicts precedent set by the SFSS in their statement regarding Ukraine. If this policy legitimizes all forms of resistance within the context of the UN General Assembly Resolution 37 to 43, this resolution cannot be considered binding international law, as the General Assembly does not have the authority under the UN Charter to construct binding resolutions. Only the Security Council is able to do. Nevertheless, 37 to 43 says nothing about identifying which groups can be considered terrorists, And as a result, as the motion stands, violence and violence against innocent civilians is not condemned. If the BDS working group is to pass a statement with respect to supporting resistance, it must state explicitly clear that the forms of resistance ought to be peaceful and cannot be used to target innocent civilians. Quote, the SFSS Executive Committee condemns the Russian invasion of Ukraine and fights for peace alongside all peoples against war locally and globally. Is the SFSS saying Jews are not people? The policy supports a cultural and academic boycott. This marginalizes Jewish and Israeli students, specifically through their inability to support any causes tied to Israel, and thus violates the BC Societies Act, which states an act of the society was done or is threatened, or a resolution of the members or directors was passed or is proposed. That is unfairly prejudicial to the members of to the member and one or more other members. All in all, reading over this policy just is inexplicably anti-Semitic, and I believe that you should all reconsider what you're about to vote on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Vivian.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello, Council representatives. I'm speaking to you as an acting executive of the Disability and Neurodiversity Alliance to urge you to vote yes to the policy. SFU DNA has unanimously endorsed the policy as it strongly aligns with our values of opposing settler colonialism and state violence. I'm glad that Jewish and Palestinian students alike have been involved in writing the policy and have been invited to review it, and that checks have also been made with the lawyer consultation. With millions of Palestinians expelled and displaced by the state of Israel, the state has created what the UN Refugee Agency has described as by far the most protracted and largest of all refugee problems in the world today. The Israeli state's blockade and occupation has both targeted disabled Palestinians specifically and caused increased incidents of disability among Palestinians by limiting their access to basic goods and services and causing long-term injuries in ongoing waves of violence. Access to any kind of support or rehabilitation for disabilities is greatly hindered by the restricted movement and the Gaza blockade imposed by the state of Israel, leaving over 90% of disabled Palestinians unemployed and living in poverty. As a disabled person myself, whose family has also fled a major war as refugees, the suffering caused by the state of Israel's actions is clear to me, as is the complicity of organizations and governments in socially, economically, and politically fueling up the apartheid. The US alone gives the state $3.8 billion in military funding. SFU also invests in at least one company that the UN has named complicit to Israel's actions. I support this issues policy as it plays a crucial role in fulfilling our responsibility as global citizens by outlining meaningful actions the SFSS can take to oppose the apartheid while being clear that it condemns solely those that support and are complicit with the state violence. I'm confident that the SFSS can and should follow steps of other university student unions in standing in solidarity with Palestinians. We all have a role in this global issue, and I urge you as counselors to vote yes. As well, with permission from the chair, I'd like to share a statement from Rasko, another acting exec of SFU DNA, who unfortunately could not make it today, but has sent his statement on behalf of our constituency group ahead of time.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is from Rasko. Hello, Council. I am speaking in support of this motion to adopt the Palestinian Liberation Issues Policies as an acting executive of the Disability and Neurodiversity Alliance. I strongly urge all of Council to vote yes to the adoption of IP 10 Palestinian Liberation, as it strongly aligns with the society's values of opposing settler colonialism and state-perpetuated violence. The SFSS has adopted numerous other stances by the use of issues policies, and this time should be no different. The state of Israel is actively perpetuating a system of apartheid against Palestinians whose land is actively being stolen by the state and to whom the state is waging ethnic cleansing against. Major human rights organizations have condemned Israel for its actions, Unfortunately, our federal government and universities have not, through arming and funding Israel. On a local university level, we all know how divestment can be a powerful mechanism to plant the roots of change. Last semester, due to the pressure from us students, SFU committed to the full divestment from fossil fuels, and we should expect the same of the university for divestment of money from corporations and funds that contribute to Israel's atrocities against Palestinians. SFU invests in at least one company that has been named by the UN to be complicit in Israel's actions. Now is the time for the SFSS and its council to decide. Will you help Palestinians in their struggle against state-sanctioned oppression? And that is it from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarity, I had approved ahead of time Vivian be able to speak with these statements on from her student union. That's why she went twice, or they went twice. Second, next is Colin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Colin I. Jeffrey, an undergrad student and organizer with SFU 350. My focus in this statement is how inarguable the facts are in this situation. So firstly, institutions such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have correctly classified Israel as an apartheid state that abuses human rights. Secondly, of the 193 member states of the United Nations, 138, so that's 71%, have recognized the state of Palestine as of July 2019. Namely, Canada, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, if not all of which are countries who have benefited from colonialism, so thus their judgment on Israel's colonial occupation is accordingly docile. Given this dynamic, decolonization shouldn't just be confined to the domestic sphere, since colonialism abroad is interconnected with it. Other student unions, including McGill, Concordia, U of T, UBC, have adopted pro-Palestine policies, which sets a precedent that should be followed by the SFSS, and this is why I endorse this policy.
Thank you, Colin. Next is, originally when they put the name on, there were just H. Is it Haya?
Yeah, it's Haya. Hi, I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but as a Palestinian studying at SFU, I support adopting a Palestinian liberation policy as it allows us to amplify Palestinian voices and advocate for things like BDS, which is just one of the few ways we can support Palestinians and work towards holding the settler colonial state of Israel accountable for its many crimes of apartheid, occupation, murder, ethnic cleansing. The list can literally go on and on. But not only that, this policy would also allow for important and uncensored conversations to be held at SFU, as well as the relaying of accurate information regarding ongoing issues and what others can do to help. And you know, at SFU, we hear a lot of talk about standing those who are oppressed and facing discrimination, which is all good stuff. And I'd just like to see the same energy to be matched for those in Palestine as well. And just lastly, other student unions, such as those at UBC, McGill, and UT, have all adopted pro-Palestine policies, and I think it's time that the SFSS finally does the same. And so I urge you to vote yes. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next on this is Jay.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, counselors, you have been fed a false bill of goods. There are many crucial facts and falsehoods that are included in this document, including repeated blood libels such as apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and Zionism as a fascist ideology that are unfortunately included in these policies that have been perpetuated over the years by groups specifically focused on vilifying Israel and denying the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. And this, unfortunately, is the same things you are doing in this issues policy by only starting your history in 1948 and denying any Jewish connections to any part of the state of Israel prior to that date. Unfortunately, you have also only consulted with independent Jewish voices and have not, and Palestinian Youth Movement, and have not invited any Jewish student group on campus to present to council or to have any other word on this policy as a whole, including as presenting to counselors. Due to the many falsehoods and crucial inaccuracies in this policy, this policy should be sent back to the working group to then get more input and to allow for further consultation and to fix many of these errors. The question also is why the SFSS thinks they are right to define anti-Semitism when there is no Jewish representation on the SFSS council or executive, and any other group has the ability to define it for themselves. So why is the SFSS doing this? Further, the council clearly has many vacancies and is not representative of the students of SFU as a whole. Therefore, we recommend this should be sent to referendum on behalf of all students, so all students can vote on it, as has done at McGill and previously at UBC and many other universities, instead of the SFSS deciding this for themselves.
Okay, thank you. I believe next one is, unfortunately,
I have a point of order.
Point of order, right?
Sorry, point of information. I just wanted to know, I do hear these comments a lot, and please, like, this is not stopping you from saying them. Like, please, like, continue to listen, speak what you would like to address. I just wanted to note that this policy did go back to the Free Palestine Working Group. That's why I actually had put this link within the chat as well for review. This also received legal advice on it, and this is why we're here continuing in this process with being able to continue to vote on it. Furthermore, I just also wanted to note that there were consultations that are done. Of course, some people are not comfortable with those being publicized, and we do want to respect them formally. And furthermore, if you do go down to certain lists as well, when it comes to a resistance, we listed resistance under international law, which was a very specific jurisdiction as well. So I just wanted to note some of those things. There was, of course, consultations with Jewish groups on campus, specifically within the summer, where we did commit to 2 specific lines within the issues policy. I do want to note that just to ensure that the facts are given, and that I did, of course, create some time and meeting times for Hillel staff who had sent it to me, and I made times that other students can come speak to me, and that we could deliberate the IP collectively as well, to ensure that people had space to speak. So I just wanted to note some of those because I think they are important. Again, I'm not stepping on anyone's foot in terms of what they are speaking about in nuance, but I just wanted to make sure that folks know the process that did happen and occur.
Okay, thank you. Just for everyone, during the point over, I did pause the timers, so for the student discussion period, so I'll restart the overall timer. So I'll restart that. Next on speakers list is Rose de Bronvinska. My apologies.
Hi, my name is Rose, and I am an SFU undergraduate student, and I was under the impression that counselors are to wait until the students are done speaking rather than taking up our time. I would like to emphasize the aspect that this motion creates a double standard for Jewish and Israeli communities on campus, which is not seen with respect to other communities. Through the academic and cultural boycott proposed, it is marginalizing a specific group of students, something that is not being done to any other groups, regardless of political issues worldwide. You mentioned the sanctions currently brought on against Russia, and while it is not at all comparable, I would like to point something out. Being Ukrainian myself, watching my relatives flee from the current Russian invasion and aggression, I don't see the Russian community on campus being condemned for having any ties to the aggressor, nor do I believe it's necessary for that. Having ties to one's culture of origin should not be condemned on the basis that a student union disagrees with the government of that nation. And yes, I say culture because I've already seen a few messages in the chat categorizing it as a religion and nothing else, not acknowledging the cultural side of it all. Jewish and Israeli communities equally should not be subjected solely for associating to their national or cultural heritage. My questions are, would the student union condemn any other nation or people for organizing on campus according to their national or cultural heritage? Why is it that only the Jewish and Israeli community is being condemned for simply associating with their community? This motion is fixated on demonizing the state of Israel and its Jewish supporters, which entails that myself and my community will feel targeted and unsafe on campus if this were to pass. I highly encourage you to vote against the passing of this discriminatory motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification for students, when a point of information occurs, that is to add clarification or ask a question. During that time, I pause the whole speaker time to make sure that students do not lose time based on that point of information. Next is Balkis.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Balkis. I'm currently a SOCA executive. Every year, like clockwork, Israel bombs Palestinian civilians during the holy month of Ramadan, Islamic month of Ramadan. This week, Israeli occupation forces raided people worshipping at Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's holiest sites, during prayer time. And just to be clear, this is a political power move to dehumanize Palestinians throughout its ethnic cleansing processes, to let them know that nowhere is safe from violence in the homelands they're indigenous to, not even the places of worship. This is no clash or conflict, as some media is disingenuously portraying, when the Israeli state military is greater than Palestine's whole economy, and Palestinians are resisting colonization with sticks and stones. I want to share a little bit about a West African state called Liberia. American white supremacists also tried to ethnically cleanse Black Africans by wedging marginalized, formerly enslaved Black people into a settler colony in Liberia. There was actually a gathering of sympathy, even though there was this racist narrative of Black people can't live with the white sentiment, but the colonial project still went on. Luckily, Liberia ended up not being ethnically cleansed, and the indigenous people got their rights and are now the majority. This is one of the deepest sources of understanding for me as a Black person to know too well how white supremacy operates. This is a reason why you've seen for such a long time history of Black and Palestinian struggles and solidarity, and from the Black Panther Party in the Americas to the anti-apartheid activists in South Africa. All are calling out Israel as a settler colonial empire. Meanwhile, settler colonies like Canada, USA, New Zealand, Australia, all of whom displaced and attempted to ethnically cleanse their indigenous peoples, have all stood with Israel. And the question is, why is that? It's all in defense of settler colonialism, but we stand with indigenous people here today. SFSS adopting this policy would allow for long-term advocacy for our student society to lobby the federal government alongside other student unions calling for the end of Palestinian oppression. BDS, this policy outlines tangible and anti-colonial actions that SFSS can take, including supporting the boycott, divest, and sanction movement in similar fashion, with opposition tactics successfully used like in apartheid South Africa. BDS is a call for an end of Palestinian oppression and calls on the state of Israel to follow international law that it is currently breaking. We saw the world's hearts ache for Ukraine and break for Ukraine. I ask that the world keep up that same energy for Black and Brown people lives globally. And I ask that SFSS counselors all vote yes to adopting this Palestinian liberation policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, please do your best to stay within 2 minutes. I appreciate everyone's effort in this. Okay, sorry, just a few things in chat distracted me. Next on the list is Rami. 1 second.
Yes, hi everybody. I am Rami, and I'm speaking today because I've been a part of SFU as an undergrad and a graduate student for over 7 years. And I have met and talked with over 100 people, and really more hundreds of people. And nobody I have ever met, even people who support the state of Israel, No one supports the damage to human life that comes with settler colonialism. And when it becomes an issue of Palestine and Israel, I ask, why are Palestinians an exception to a rule that no human will oppose? Now, the opposition is trying to spread lies about lies and confusion about a very simple fact, and that is that Israel is building its ever-growing state on non-vacant land. It's not land that they're developing as they're going. People already live there, and Israel is expanding, and they're paying the price. So we desperately need motions like this to do anything in our power to protect those people living on that land. So I urge all the councillors here to support this motion, and I hope that everybody can see through the lies and confusion of the opposition.
Thank you. Just as a heads up, we have 5 minutes left in our student discussion period. Next person is Heda.
Yeah, thank you, Corbett. I'd just like to first fully wholeheartedly support this motion. And one thing that I would like to share with everyone is in my 2 years of advocating for the people of Palestine, these are words I personally, and I'm sure a lot of other advocates for Palestine would be familiar with, whenever you remotely speak in favor of Palestinians or against the state of Israel, you've been marked as an anti-Semite. And I would just take these 2 minutes to explain how that is not anti-Semitism. If I today criticize the government of China for its treatment towards the Muslims of Uyghur, the people of Uyghur, that does not make me a xenophobe. If I criticize the government of India, the Modi's regime, for its treatment towards the Muslims in Kashmir and in India, that does not make me some sort of anti-Hindu or a Hindu-phobe. If I criticize the government of Saudi for its treatment towards the people in Yemen, that does not make me an Islamophobe. Similarly, if I criticize the state of Israel for its absolute barbaric treatments towards the people of Palestine for the last 70 years, then guess what? That does not make me an anti-Semite as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next person is Tal.
Hey everyone, my name is Tal. I hope you can hear me. All good? Okay, anyways, thank you for allowing me to speak here. Yeah, so I think, I hope I speak for everyone by saying that really, I hope for peace out of all of this. It's a terrible situation what's happening in that part of the world right now. However, this motion is extremely one-sided and anti-Semitic, and at the end of the day, it's just going to further create an echo chamber which divides the SFU community. So I'll start by saying that no peace is going to come from terrorism against innocent civilians. Now, the Palestinian peoples are governed by both Hamas, an internationally recognized terrorist group that is admitted to shooting rockets from schools and hospitals and using Palestinians as human shields, and the PLO, an authoritarian regime that rewards terrorism, like the Palestinian Authority Martyrs Fund, over $300 million paid out in 2016, whose only goal and purpose is the destruction and legitimization of the state of Israel. Furthermore, it's extremely insensitive to compare the situation to Black Lives Matter, the South African apartheid, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So one of the focal points of your motion, which is supporting the BDS. So BDS campaigns represent a hostile tactic that rests on the fundamental rejection of Israel's right to exist or defend itself. BDS, and in extension this motion, does nothing to promote peace. And BDS, unlike the vast majority of the Israeli public, does not support a two-state solution. A way more constructive approach would be to promote initiatives that build bridges, promote interaction, and help prepare both societies for peace. So ultimately, this motion boycotts anyone of Israeli nationality. Straight from the document, the purpose is to be working with anti-colonial Palestinian and anti-Zionist Jewish groups. Anti-Zionism is literally the opposition to the state of Israel. You are supporting boycott groups and ideologies that boycott and marginalize those of Israeli nationality. yeah, and ultimately, the only solutions here are going to come by open dialogue, conversations, and ultimately love and respect for each other, not through promoting divide and hate. And that's exactly what this motion promotes, and if passed, what this motion will create. And personally, as a Jewish student on campus, I feel incredibly marginalized and belittled by this motion. So yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak here today.
Thank you, Tal. You're the last speaker. Is that we've now expired in the for the student discussion section?
I would like to actually move to at least allow the speakers list to speak. Is that okay?
You'd like to basically extend the discussion period just to finish off the speakers list?
Yes.
So freeze it basically as what? Okay. I'll just do. So you're moving that. I can second that. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. Seeing there's none, I will move to a vote. All in favor, seek unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you to record your vote. See that carries unanimously. Just give me a few minutes to kind of reset. Okay. Just a minute, I'm just finalizing the list. Okay, that looks like I've got everyone. So no more lists will be added from students. What's remaining is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You have a point of information, yourself?
Yeah, I was just wondering how many counselors we have present and like how quorum will be affected at 7.
Give me a minute to check for quorum. We still have, sorry, yeah, we still have quorum. Just at least 27. It's kind of a little hard to tell because sometimes it doesn't fully go alphabetized in the chat. Thank you. Okay, sorry. So next will be Michaela. 1 second.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela, and I'm a Jewish and Israeli student on campus. I would like to point out a few things, so I'll try to run through it quickly. The first point is the fact that our nowadays media and the council is fact, and this policy is very one-sided. As it was mentioned above, Israel targeting Palestinians during their holy days and whatnot, but I would like to remind all of you that last week it was Passover, and during the last 3 to 4 weeks, over 14 Israelis were killed just down in the streets, in the bars, just walking down the street and being shot by Palestinians, I will clarify, and you will not hear any of that in the news. Also last May, when the operation went down, when Gaza was bombarded by Israel, the fact that all of you forgot to mention is the fact that Gaza started shooting rockets at Israel, and some hours even reached to 600 rockets per hour that was shot in Israel, in civilized and in the major cities, in order to hurt and kill as many Israelis as possible. Make no mistake, this is no news to Israelis. Ever since 48, we're used to being, during war times, having Palestinians smuggle their way in Israel and bomb themselves, shoot, murder Israelis, anything you like, and anything in the name of, I don't know in the name of what. But the point being made is that it's not one-sided, and it's not as a lot of people and the news like to show it. There's always two sides to a conflict, and personally, as an Israeli that lived through it and that had to take transit and be afraid whether I'm going to be bombed or not, and having to go to psychologists to be able to transit when I'm going in Canada, it's really unfortunate to see how you guys mistreat and very stick to one-sided narrative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Here, next person is Samsonite. Okay, sorry, Samsonite, you've been trolling in chat, so no. We'll move on to the next person. Parsa, 1 second.
May I speak?
Yes, you can.
On the question of media bias, I find it rich that people are speaking about media bias against the state of Israel, when in fact, multiple mainstream media has basically excluded Palestinian voices for generations and continues to do so. In fact, CBC continues to remove Palestine as a term from its vocabulary. So when we talk about a sort of cleansing intent in the removal of an entire group of people, Palestinians have been marginalized, excluded. And I mean, this is only talking about with the perspective of media, what's happening to them on a day-to-day basis and what's happened to them for the past 70 plus years is the destruction of their bodies, their families, their children, their relationship with their lands, their homes. This is not a simple matter of bias. We're talking about removing a people from history. The gravity of the situation must be noted. And for Palestinians, you know, and the common media is not even one place where Palestinians are being erased. In fact, you can find massive policy, major policies, even trade deals between Canada and the state of Israel, two settler colonial states, that have effectively excluded Palestinians in the language, that would rather discuss various national security measures in their trade deals, effectively violating international law. And I would encourage folks to have a better understanding of international law when speaking on it. For example, the right to exist for states does not exist in the legal corpus of international law, and the right to resist is enshrined in the Hague Conventions as a customary norm in international law. So let's be frank about the plight of the Palestinians and the validity of the Palestinian struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on this is Mo, but not sure if they're in the chat anymore. Did they change their name? Just for, can someone correct me? Or did they leave? Okay. Next is Morgan. 1 second.
Hello, can everyone hear?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Morgan, and I am from Radical Individuals for Solidarity and Equity, or RISE SFU. I am here to speak for another RISE supporter who could not make it. They are of Cree Métis ancestry and wanted to say, In 1977, the American Indian movement launched the treaty councils and conference globally to establish relations with other people who are under the thumb of American imperialism. One of the first countries to give us solidarity was the Palestinian delegation. At almost every council, Palestinians were with us at powwows, prayer circles, and feasts. There was such connection that many indigenous people on Turtle Island and Palestinians saw themselves as family. Chairman of the PLO, Yasser Arafat, noted that this is one part of our struggle, to ensure that we do not suffer the same fate of the American Indians at the hands of the Yankees. He did not say this to state that indigenous people were below Palestinians, but that the swaths of Palestinians who assisted us with our struggle saw what 500 years of British and American settler colonialism could bring. Statelessness, exile, being forced onto reservations, and a lack of recognition as Cree, Ojibwe, Lakota, Diné as people. So for those of you who stand firmly against indigenous oppression here, who have fought against the TMX, been with us in our pain over missing and murdered indigenous women and girls, let us all stand in solidarity with the Palestinians as well, because from Turtle Island to Palestine, it is one struggle, one fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kabir, who posted in chat before they had to leave due to a technical issue. I copied it and I'll read it out. I want to say that as a Uyghur, an ethnic group of people who are currently undergoing a genocide, I feel deeply for what the Jewish community has gone through and is going through in terms of anti-Semitism. I am, however, in support of an oppressive regime such as Israel that attacks and constantly harasses a group of people whom have been pushed from a majority to a minority status within their own state. I urge everyone to think about who the oppressors are, and also I invite everyone to ensure that they are upholding safety for those of the Jewish community to ensure that this motion doesn't affect these existing groups negatively. Fully endorse the implementation of this policy and invite everyone to continue the efforts even after the adoption of said policy. Hashtag Free Palestine, hashtag Free Uyghurs. Thank you. Next is Ashana. 1 second.
I am a SF student at SFU, and I encourage counselors to vote in favor with the SFSS motion. Palestinians should not be able to live safely without being afraid for their lives. It is our role to condemn what is happening to Palestinians and show support as a student union in ending this apartheid. I also know that other student unions have adopted pro-Palestinian policies such as McGill, UFT, and UBC. Also, as incoming exec, it is important that this policy is put in place to ensure solidarity with Palestinian students. So once again, I encourage counselors to vote in favor with the SFSS motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Iza or Liza. Sorry, fortunately the font wasn't clear.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Sure. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm actually Palestinian and I am with this policy. To start off, I just want to make sure that we're not being against Jews. Religion does not have anything with the country. And I want to make this 100% just like ISIS and its actions, as it does not represent Islam. We're not being against a religion. We're just being against the oppression that is happening to our people. As a person who did actually live in Palestine for quite some while, I can tell you that we are oppressed. We do not have basic human rights. Just a week ago, a girl that was actually on her way to high school because she wanted to revise for her exams was shot to death. I don't know if you heard about the shootings that happened while people were worshiping in the Aqsa during Ramadan. So this motion is just, we're trying to live a peaceful, simple life without fearing for our lives, without fearing that when our phone rings and we want to pick it up to hear that somebody in our family has passed away or died. The fight is not fair. Israel does have sources more than Palestinians will ever do. And so yes, this is what I want to make sure, and I'm with the policy. Thank you so much. This is it.
Thank you. I've had two people ask for lists, the speaker list, but we've already frozen it just so that we can finish off the speaker list as it went. There was more people than was originally planned for speaking time, so we can't add any more students to the speaker list. But we're getting close to being finished. Last is Saeed, I believe. Yes, thanks, Maria, unless the councilor extends. I was going by the current agreement motion passed by council. So 1 second. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sajid, and I support this policy. I'd like to point out a few things that the opponents of this policy seem to not have realized. Number one, when the State of Israel was founded, the British and Zionist leaders were well aware that people were living in the state of Palestine, because the movement to create an independent state for the Jewish people was well before the 19th century. It was well before 1948, sorry. The origins were actually in the 1840s due to anti-Semitism in Europe. Number two, standing against the state of Israel does not mean that we are anti-Semitic. Similar to what a proponent of this policy stated before, just because you criticize Saudi Arabia for its actions against Yemen does not mean it does not mean that you're Islamophobic. Just because you criticize the Indian government for its actions against the Muslims in Kashmir and in India as a whole does not mean that you are Hindu phobic. And criticizing the Chinese government for its treatment of the Uyghur Muslims does not mean that you are Sinophobic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a point of information was in by Miranda in chat. Just for clarity, point information is more for, it's more from the council side for clarification on the process as well. Okay, that is the last person listed on the speakers list for students. We can then now move into count speakers list for council. Just give me a minute to set up because there's a little bit different setup. A reminder, councilors we have set aside 25 minutes. Councilors can speak to a motion twice and for 2 minutes each. Okay, give me just 1 second to set it myself. If you'd like, councilors, if you'd like to add yourself to speaker list, please put list in the chat and I'll add you and then we'll start going from there.
So councilors, you could list. Corbett, would you like some help with the list? Either a council could help take that on.
Yeah, I would appreciate it because I'm kind of doing timer plus list plus everything on it. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
get a little frazzled. Give me a minute. I did create a document to share to track that. Normally I have a vice chair who can help this, but he wasn't able to make it today. So 1 second. Yeah, I can add them through their council email. Okay. Okay, once.
Joselle is willing to help, so you could send.
Sorry, say that again, right?
Joselle is willing to help, so if you could just send that list privately to her, that would be great.
So currently it is. Currently, we have 3 counselors listed. 4, my mistake. Just double checking. Okay, everyone, I understand there's kind of debate happening back and forth in the chat. Appreciate if you can comment down. Okay. First we'll go with Audrey. No, one second. Oh yeah, that's right. You can do it.
I'm reading this statement on behalf of someone who could not make it today due to an emergency. Hi, my name is Martha, and I'm a Jewish and Israeli student. I believe that counselors should vote yes to the Palestine liberation policy. My family moved to Israel from Kazakhstan in 1996, and I was born 2 years later in Tel Aviv, and lived in the city of Holon until my family immigrated again, this time to Canada in the summer of 2008. I have a grandma who still lives in Israel. In school, I remember being taught about democracy and equal rights, yet at the same time being taught that Israel was a country surrounded by enemies, and that everyone around us wanted to destroy Israel. As a child, I didn't know the name Palestine, and I definitely wouldn't have been able to identify to you where Gaza and the West Bank were on a map, despite living a 35-minute drive away from the West Bank. In university, like many people, I was introduced to radical ideas about changing the world and making it a better place. It was around this time that both TSSU and UBC undergrads were trying to present BDS motions that I heard Palestinian voices and narratives for the first time. I had to do a lot of unlearning at this time and relearning. I was never an advocate for Israel or for Zionism, but I never realized how saturated my surroundings were with Israeli propaganda and misinformation. Since then, I've spent the last 7 years doing solidarity work for Palestinians and amplifying the narrative of resistance and self-determination for Palestine. I'm here this evening speaking at the policy vote meeting because I believe that no life is worth more than another. The news coming from Palestine right now is a repeated offense by Israel, which is planned and calculated following an agenda of ethnic cleansing and colonization. I don't want to participate in the comparison where Israeli lives lost matter more than the dozens of Palestinians who have died this past year alone from Israeli attacks. The effects of Israel are not limited to death. The project of Zionism also worked to displace, disable, and erase the Palestinian people. The council should consider that there is no one voice representing a consensus among the Jewish community, while there are still some voices which are louder in support of Israel. There are also more people who are learning about the reality of Palestine and are joining in solidarity. At the same time, being Jewish is not the same as being Israeli, even though I happen to be both. And now speaking on behalf of myself, I strongly support this issue policy.
Thank you, Audrey. Marie, you are next.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I didn't plan on saying this today, but as you folks have seen within this week in and of itself, there have been a lot of atrocities happening within Palestine. Specifically, the state of Israel's occupation forces have been attacking Palestine, as you've seen last year, Al-Aqsa and Gaza, that are continuously being attacked this week. Today, let alone, Gaza has been bombed in the same order that were attacked from last Ramadan as well. I think about this and I think about what that means for people in the region and especially the children in this region. I think of stories like Ahmed Mansara, who was a 13-year-old child when he was shot and run over in 2015 by the State of Israel soldiers, and then arrested and tortured for the last 7 years by torment, prevention of medical care, very vigorous interrogations, and a 4 consecutive month solidarity confinement. The United Nations associates solidarity confinement lasting longer than 15 consecutive days a form of torture. Ahmed has been in there for 4 months, which is 8 times of that in confinement. This is not a new situation. It is familiar story to many Palestinians who share this, who are children. Palestinians are mass incarcerated for resisting colonization, for resisting apartheid. They are arrested often for no reason with no sentencing. Palestinians are subject to excessive force and militia and used on civilians out of pure spite. As you can see in countless videos surfaced by Palestinians over the years, and I very much so urge you to look into Ahmed's interrogation as well, and that this calls the question about how this could even be a possibility. And the answer is it wouldn't be without international support. The US alone and of itself provides $3.8 billion in military aid annually to the State of Israel. And Canada also sells arms too. They also have been part of this military aid as well in 2019. And that is aside from political alliance, economic support, and social normalizations, which further allows Israel's apartheid acts against Palestinians to continue. This is not getting down on the civilians of these regions either. We are not aligning Jewish identity too closely to the State of Israel. Jewish folks are not a monolith. They should not be responsible for the State of Israel's actions, and it is inappropriate to even reference this in the first place. It also continues the further silencing of Palestinians in the first place, because then they are claimed to be discriminatory or oppressive when they are already talking about their own marginalization. It is clear that the West plays a huge role in and of itself, specifically so-called Canada too. Also, our institutions are well invested in thousands to millions in complicit Israeli companies. These continue the complicity of residing and working on occupied lands at the bitter end of Palestinian expulsions as well. The world has failed Palestinians and therefore have no right to speak on their resistance or what their forms of liberation look like. However, we do have a role in all of this, whether we agree or not, and we have a choice to ensure we do our part to not only support the Israeli state's violations of international law and settler colonialism and apartheid, but the SFSS has committed to anti-colonial efforts in the past, and that extends to anti-colonialism globally. So let's join other students and unions in Canada using our resources to be on the right side. I will be voting in support of Palestinians today, and I urge the Council to vote unanimously in favor as well. But I also want to say, standing in solidarity with Palestinians does not mean that we don't stand in solidarity with anyone else. There are Palestinian Jewish folks as well. There are European Jewish folks as well who do not agree with the State of Israel's actions. And additionally, there are other forms of other ethnicities like Ethiopian Jewish folks as well. So in continuing this and moving forward, it's so important that we do not label folks in a certain way or certain viewpoint. We all have a shared identity, but that does not mean that it equates to our stances. However, for Palestine, the State of Israel sees and discriminates Palestinians on the basis of their Palestinianhood, and that is called apartheid, and that needs to be ended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marie. Just a reminder to everyone to do their best to stay within the 2 minutes because you are able to speak more than once. Okay. Next is Giselle.
Yeah. Okay. So on June 10, 2021, the SFSS released a statement on the Israeli colonization of Palestine and made a commitment to BDS. Upon releasing this statement, we committed to advocating for and stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And many months later, almost a year later, through the continuous labor of members of the Exec and Council and SFU community members, we have the opportunity to follow up our statement with action by passing this issues policy. This issues policy does not condone any forms of oppression, including anti-Semitism. It's important we remember that we are condoning the actions of the Israeli state, who have violated and continue to violate the human rights of the Palestinian people, and there have been many clear cases of that recently during Ramadan. Passing this issues policy is critical to our commitment to solidarity with the Palestinian people, and we must not shift our focus away from that. I encourage all councillors to vote in favor, and it is our duty to follow through with our previous commitments and for Palestinian students to feel supported and heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. Mohammed, you are next.
Yes, hi everyone. I'll be voting for this motion. I think I can preface that. It's been, I think, a full year since we've talked about this topic, so fun to be bringing it back. So there are several reasons why I'm in support of this motion. First of all, I should probably preface that I'm an Arab, a Jordanian Arab. I've lived with Palestinians my whole life. If anyone knows anything about the Middle Eastern culture, Jordanians see themselves as brothers and sisters of Palestine. We are literal neighbors. So we share a lot of the burdens of what occurs within the region in general. I would like to start with a certain point that I forgot who mentioned. They said something along the lines of Israelis are used to being bombed and attacked since 1948. And I did want to ask, though, it wasn't my time, but I did want to ask, has anyone actually asked themselves why that started in 1948? Could it potentially be because that was when the state of Israel formed on Palestinian lands? And so the Palestinians who were on their land were fighting to defend their land. I know it's shocking to think that someone would try to defend their land. It's kind of weird, but let's scratch that. I want to get to another topic, though. The topic of this isn't a one-sided conflict, that there is two sides, because, you know, Molotov cocktails are the same as Stinger missiles in some people's eyes. You know what? I'll ignore the specifics of it. You cannot say that you are in a one-sided conflict when the literal most powerful military on earth supports you, and when the literal most powerful military on earth has budget constraints specifically for you on a yearly basis. You can't say that. That's like saying, oh, two people fighting, I gave one of them a gun and one of them a stick. That's a fair fight. The argument destroys itself. I love it when arguments just destroy themselves, when you look just a little bit closer. But given that I have been looking at this for years, I will be voting for this motion. I urge most councillors to vote for this motion. And yeah, the arguments against it are weak at best. And if you look into them for more than 5 minutes, you'll realize that they do not exist. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next person is Chloe.
So I'll keep this short because I'm echoing a lot of what has already been said, but I wanted to show my support for the motion. From what I've learned about this issue, this is clearly an issue of human rights, and I fully condemn the actions of the state of Israel against Palestinians. I understand, and I hope everyone understands, that this is not condemning any individual or groups of people, but rather the state itself. And for this reason, I'll be voting in favor of this motion, and I urge other councillors to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Next is Nim.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So I'm here today to speak on behalf of the SFSS Women's Center Collective, and as the Women's Center Collective, we are in favor of this motion as it aligns with our mandate focusing on decolonization and anti-oppression. We condemn the violence inflicted upon Palestinian peoples and take a stance against the apartheid regime. The state of Israel is perpetuating laws, protocols, and policy that attack Palestinians based on their identity as Palestinians. The Women's Center Collective agrees that the SFSS has to do their due diligence in condemning the social, economic, and political complicity that fuels this apartheid. We all have a role to play in this, and this issues policy is a clear indication that we as a student union support the human rights and dignity of Palestinians. Our condemnation is directed explicitly towards the state and those who are complicit in supporting the state, and consequently, we are in support of the BDS movement as it directly addresses and confronts this complicity.
Thank you, Nim. 1 second. Next is Matt.
Is everyone able to hear me okay? All right. Today I will be voting in favor of this issues policy to support and be in solidarity with Palestinians and Palestinian students who are currently at SFU who've come to speak today. As an Indigenous person living in a colonial state on stolen land, I support the ways in which Palestinians find liberation in their home territories, as well as the ways in which they have come here to share their personal experiences. I will continue to take a stance against settler colonial violence. Palestinian students have come here today, again, to share their lived experience from a place of vulnerability, as well as to push back against colonial narratives. We cannot turn a blind eye to those facing colonial violence globally while we decolonize here. And if we push back against colonialism, it should be in all forms. And today we have that opportunity to continue to support and amplify and to do this work in a good way. Free Palestine.
Thank you. Serena is next and currently the last person on the counselor speaking list, at least for the first round. Is there additional counselors who would like, please list yourself if you'd like to yourself to speaker list.
Thank you, Chair. This issues policy decides whether the SFSS is going to take a stand against the ongoing oppression against Palestinian people at the hands of the Israeli state. Being silent in the face of oppression is violence, regardless of the intention that is the impact. As folks who reside in so-called Canada, we understand that we live within a settler colonial state that's actively participating in a genocide against Indigenous peoples, and that this is something we should condemn. The state of Israel is a settler colonial state that is actively participating in a genocide against Palestinian people. Our opinion on genocide should not change depending on the ethnicity of the people who are being victimized. Today, you either vote in favor of this motion and condemn genocide, which I will be doing, and condemn genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, or you vote against or abstain from this motion and stand on the side of the oppressor. Thank you.
Thank you. Jess, you're next.
Can you hear me okay? Sorry, I'm about like to lose my voice. Okay. I want to voice my support for this motion, and I also want to acknowledge and thank the working group who have worked on this issues policies for the past year and done so with the proper consultations. The IP focuses on the importance to support the Palestinian community and resist forms of colonization overseas. We have seen the harm that Palestinians have faced and the support they need while they attend school here, as they have families and loved ones still in Palestine. We have supported decolonization here within so-called Canada, and we should continue to do so to other forms of colonization elsewhere. The SFSS Council throughout the year has attended and listened to folks within community through multiple dev sessions to help us understand the BDS movement and Free Palestine. We have supported and continue to support the Palestinians, and I strongly urge Council to vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Jess. Marie, you were next. Is this to be your second time?
Yes. Yeah, I just also wanted to send a lot of thanks to the Free Palestine Working Group as well. I know many folks within it really put so many hours into formulating it, into doing our research, doing our due diligence as well, and really putting so much energy into it. So I just want to thank all of you folks. I also want to thank the Palestinians who have been part of the Free Palestine working group, who put a lot of labor into this, and I can only imagine how heavy that is on you as a person. It's difficult to talk about your own marginalization, and it feels tough as it could further marginalize us as well. So I want to say thank you for your courage. Thank you for what you've done as well. You've committed a lot of time within a year. Additionally, I would also just like to thank council, who's done a lot of learning. I know who have done lots of research and delved into a lot of these resources and have, done their own due diligence to look into this as well. And I just hope that folks do stand in solidarity as this, we all play a role in this, whether we have a choice or not. Internationally, everyone has a power in this. So I hope we can see this role. We could see how that is relevant to our positions and the student union, that we have the rights to, of course, look into our own funds and say where our funds should go as well. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and I want to thank all the students who've come out to voice how they feel, who have voiced their opinions as well, and I do really, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marie. I believe I'm next on the speakers list. First, I'm going to use this period to actually speak on behalf of a student who submitted a short statement. I said that they would have been able to post it at the end of the discussion part with students there, but I missed that, so I was on my mistake. So I'll read it out now. This was from Marwan. He's said, vote yes for this motion. I was born in Gaza and lived there for 8 years. My house was bombed several times. My family has no connection to any resistance groups in Gaza. If this isn't proof that Israel indiscriminately bombs Palestinians, I don't know what is. Israel has access to the most accurate weaponry available if they choose to target high-density civilian areas. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm catching up on chat here. No. As stated correctly, Marie has spoken twice to this motion, specifically in the discussion period for counselors. Okay, just doing a quick check on the, okay, I will actually be listing myself for a second time for my own statement. So I've sit here and I've listened to students, counselors giving their views and statements and perspectives. And I am in support of this motion, this policy being passed. I see frighteningly similar parallels to the history of Canada and the indigenous populations, the First Nations, Métis, others, through, and it wasn't just expanding on borders, it's changing laws, it's in, what's the word, unequal application of laws, of policies, of finances. I'm in support of the BDS as a movement because you do not have a lot of these actions by the state of Israel come from, they wouldn't happen without resources, without finances, without support from organizations, companies, other governments. This policy, again, specifically targets the state of Israel's actions and those who support those actions or contribute to those actions, specifically companies, specific universities, and others. I think it's a very targeted policy, and that any arguments of that Israeli students or Jewish students would be harmed here because of this policy is creating, it implies, in my opinion, a very racist perspective that Palestinian students would somehow are inherently more violent, or that they would be empowered to be violent based on this policy, which I think is absurd. And basically, like I said, I support this motion passing, and I hope the rest of the council supports it as well. Thank you. I want to do, I guess, one last round of requesting if the councilors would like to list themselves to speak on this motion. If not, then we will move to a vote. So again, okay, Kayla and Olive are next. So Kayla, go ahead.
So I am fully in support of this motion on behalf of SASU. SASU is actually, so the Sociology and Anthropology Union is full of minorities in the university, and there's also some Palestinians that express their support. And I think it's time for our university to not only study about racism or racist policies, but also to stand together with the students that are oppressed. And I am speaking in support of this motion.
Thank you, Kayla. Olive?
Hi, everyone. I'm speaking in favor of this motion. Being half Afghan, I really do feel for the Palestinians and what they go through because of war. And it's really like hard to see, and being a first generation Canadian and seeing that with my family, and it's basic human rights and being pushed out of your country and having family members being killed and people wanting just to go to school and learn and go on with their lives, but it's at a halt because of a situation like this. And I just really hope people do vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, one last reminder is there any counselors that would like to add themselves to the speaking list? Seeing none, okay. This has been multiple times I've asked. We'll now move to a vote. I have not heard anyone from council who's speaking against the motion. Sorry, one second. Perfect timing on the whole council side of things. Okay, because I have not heard anyone from council speaking against this motion, I will seek unanimous consent. And so if you would like to have your vote notice for abstention or opposition, I encourage you to use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I can call on you and record that vote for the councilors. Sorry, just a lot of stuff going on in chat. I would again encourage everyone to please stop posting in chat, just so that I can keep track of what's going on. We've had 2 different periods for discussion and periods for students and counselors to voice their perspectives, but we are now moving on to a vote. Okay. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I will call on you to record your vote. And I'll give people a few seconds to find that if on Zoom. Okay. Seeing none, this motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now move on to rest of the agenda, which give me 2 seconds to actually bring up. That is the only item, and so we will move to adjournment. Item 18.1, motion to adjourn. So be resolved to adjourn the meeting at 7:22 p.m. Do I have a mover?
OR moves.
Sorry, can you say that again?
OR moves.
Oh, thank you, OR. And do I have a seconder?
Jeremy seconds that.
Thank you. Any discussion on ending the meeting? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I'll call you to record your vote. That carries. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting at council will be on April 27th. We are also potentially holding another special council meeting to handle additional business due to just a lot of stuff happening in the last week of before this term ends. There has been an email sent out by the VP Internal, Chloe Homonuk, to ask you for which days and times you are available. Councilors, please fill that out so that we can have a good day and time that the majority of people can attend, because we still have a number of policy, spending motions, budgets, a whole bunch of other areas that need to be approved or just not approved. So thank you again for everyone who came. I understand that this was a contentious motion for students and others, and I do appreciate all of you coming to voice your perspective and your views and your statements. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, folks, I'm just going to list in the chat. I'm just going to say, like, we're going to kick folks out if they continue like harassing or oppressive language. This was mentioned before, so I just want to remind folks again.
Okay, Marie, do you like to stop the recording since the meeting's finished, and I can end the meeting?